Welcome to the Money is Emotional podcast with Christine Luken, the financial dignity coach. In this podcast, we help you recover a positive and peaceful relationship with your personal finances. We do this by bringing together wise money management with emotional intelligence. Join us for this journey where we navigate our relationship with money as Christine Luken draws from years of experience and guest experts to help you get to the root of your money issues.
Hello, my friend. Welcome to the Money is Emotional podcast. I am your host, Christine Luken. Today's episode is the quantum physics of manifestation. I am honored to welcome my friend and special guest, Carissa Andrews, an award-winning and internationally best-selling indie author with over 25 published books. She is the CEO of Author Revolution, an online academy dedicated to helping indie authors become publishing powerhouses. As the host of the Author Revolution podcast, Carissa dives into topics from step-by-step strategies for indie authors to mindset techniques that elevate authors to manifest their millionaire author destiny. Welcome, Carissa.
Well, thanks so much for having me, Christine. I'm so excited to be here.
I know. I am excited that you are here as well. So I know we are going to have a lot to talk about today. So I want to just dive right into the deep end. So, Carissa, your business involves writing books and helping other authors to do the same. Tell us a story of how you began pairing the business with mindset, manifestation, and of all things, quantum physics.
Oh, such a broad spectrum of things, right? I started writing at a very young age. And it wasn't until about 2010 that I decided to start publishing for real. And so I started kind of going through the process as we do, decided to go indie, mostly because I had a background in all sorts of things. So I was a bookseller at local bookstores. I was a production manager for a magazine publishing house. I was also a production manager for printers. So it's like I kind of tap danced around the whole thing, ended up becoming a graphic designer. So learning the spectrum of printing and publishing was kind of my jam at the time. What I found was that there were a lot of people, once I went indie, that, especially in my local community, they didn't understand how the process worked or why they should even do it. And so many people were still in that kind of struggle bus where it was like they wanted to get their books out there. They had something to be told, but they didn't think indie publishing or self-publishing was a viable option. And so my local library approached me. They were like, hey, you've got 3 books already published. You've done it really quickly. Would you mind teaching authors in our community to do this thing? Sure, I can do that. And so I created a 6 session kind of in-person situation for our local library. I live in central Minnesota. And of course, we planned this thing over the middle of winter because why not? Which meant that there were people who ended up missing certain sessions because it was like, I think we got snowed in one day and we had below 40 degrees wind chills another time. And so I was trying to figure out, how do I get the sessions, the messages that those students missed because of the weather? How do I get those to them? And so I started looking into online courses. I was going to do it originally just through WordPress. There was like a plugin that seemed to work pretty good. But I evolved beyond that. I ended up at Teachable, and now I'm over at Kajabi because I love the integration of everything that they do there. I have everything in one place. It just makes my life so much easier. But where my process kind of transitioned, I've always been kind of, I don't know, I guess part sci-fi, part woo. And so it's like, on one hand, I love energy work. I love manifestation. I love law of attraction. I love crystals. I'm a Reiki master. I love mindset work, the whole thing. And then on the other side, I love technology. I love AI. I love digging into new ways to do things. I love computers and all the things. And I love science. That's kind of been in our family for a long time. Technology and science has been, you're either one or the other, because my mom's an artist, my dad's in tech. And so it was like, which one are you going to be? I chose to do both because why not? And so, yeah, my brother's he's going to school for being a physicist and in the U of M, actually, in Minnesota. And so for him, that's his actual job. For me, it's more just a hobby of listening to him speak, understanding what the processes, the theories, the aspects are. And then my creative mind takes those theories and goes, wait a minute, I can overlay that. I can understand how these things actually match up. And so quantum manifestation kind of came out of that process of learning, wait a minute, I know the steps. I know what I'm teaching for the steps of manifestation, for instance. And these sound an awful lot like they coincide. And so I started playing around with the concepts, and I found that for authors, for people who are struggling with the kind of more woo concept of manifestation, having a scientific basis of understanding it was really a powerful key element that was missing to help them kind of lock in why this thing works. And even if they don't fully understand the theory of it. I mean, I don't even to the degree of a true physicist understand the process or the theories of everything. But I've been studying it for a long time, listening to my brother talk for many, many, many years, that I have a pretty good basis of how it all works. And so it kind of just merged together after a meditation, in fact, this past year, where I was like, oh my gosh, I see the overlay of how all of these things are working. And so now I've been incorporating it, teaching it, working on developing the strategy behind teaching it so that it makes more sense to authors, because obviously this is for the author perspective. And yeah, that's kind of where I've gone from that point.
Yeah. Well, and I think that was one of the reasons why I connected with you. So, fun fact for the listeners, I found Carissa's podcast because at the end of last year, beginning of this year, I was doing goal setting. And one of the things that I really wanted to bring forward was my books, because I was thinking about what is going to be my lasting legacy. Yes, I love coaching people one-on-one, but that reaches one person or one couple at a time. And so it's like, what has influenced my life so much? And I find that most writers are also avid readers. And so when I think about some of the books that influenced me in personal development and finances and just, changed my worldview through fiction, it was books. It was books. And so I thought, this is something that can live beyond me. And so one of my things was like, okay, well, if this is something that I'm going to be moving towards, what are some of these small baby steps that I should be doing that are going to support me? And one of the things that came up was, oh, I should listen to some podcasts that are for authors. So I found like 3 different ones. I listened to all 3 of them, and I'm like, I don't like that one. I don't like that one. I'm like, I freaking love this one. And I love this woman. And within probably 2 weeks, you had launched, I think it was a free challenge. Okay. I went through your free challenge at the beginning of the year, and I was like, oh my God, this is awesome. And on the back end of that, you said, okay, well, now I've got this other thing I'm doing that's a paid offer. And I'm like, here, take my money.
I think that would have been probably the Millionaire Author Challenge, right? When we did that one, and then it led into Millionaire Author Manifestation earlier this year.
Uh-huh. So you manifested me.
Sweet. That's how it works, right? We tap into the quantum field and call all the right people through quantum entanglement. Yes. That's how we do it. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So let us get into this, and maybe we can even use this as an example. Let's get into the practical application. So you say the first step to manifesting what you want is to decide. Why is this so important? And how does that relate with quantum physics?
Yeah, super important. So if you look into quantum field theory, it's basically this energetic web that exists everywhere, right? And so everything exists in a state of infinite potential until the observer looks at it, until we either measure it or we look at it and make a decision based on what it is, and then things will start to shift. And that's called collapsing the wave function, okay? So when you're looking at, let's say, your author career, and you're trying to figure out, like you did, Christine, where you're trying to figure out what's your next step, well, you're looking at the infinite possibilities because nothing has truly concretized in your brain just yet, right? You know that you could go podcasting, you could probably speak, you could do more books, you could go fiction if you wanted to, like all the different possibilities were out there that you could have chosen instead to look at 3 different podcasts. Give yourself an option to kind of start tap dancing into it. That was your decision point, right? You decided, and then you manifested the 3 that you wanted. You took inspired action because you knew that you would do it. these are steps, by the way, we'll go into them more. But you manifested it, you looked into it, you started taking inspired action, listening, and eventually the next right steps became more aware to your consciousness, right? More of the particle collapsed and the wave function collapsed into a particle. So you're now taking a look at your reality. You're moving in the direction of that manifestation of having your legacy be more aware in the spectrum of people, having more people come to you, having more knowledge about how the process works for you. And so all of those things kind of came into being. And so your decision really is your superpower. Until you make a decision on anything, you're kind of stuck in that realm of infinite possibilities until that's the case. Authors do it when they're not willing to look at their characters, when they're not willing to create a plot line, when they're not willing to decide what they want their author career to be and manifest more money, right? So it's like there's all sorts of ways that we kind of exist in this infinite possibilities until we make that decision. And that's when everything collapses into what's called a particle. I don't know if you want me to go into like the physics of like what that means, but
so please do. Let's nerd out on science.
Let's totally geek out. Okay, so classic physics is basically understanding like the function of the physical world in anything that's bigger than the size of an atom, right? So it's anything in the physical realm that we're dealing with. And for a long time, we thought that anything in the subatomic like level would be working and operating in the same way. It would be a solid thing. We thought the atom was a solid thing. But as we developed more tools, microscopes, things like that we could start to understand what was inside the atom, we realized that the atom has a nucleus, and then it has this thing called an electron cloud. And so inside the electron cloud, we found that the electron can exist in multiple states all at the same time. So it looks like a wave of energy. And that's basically considered quantum superposition is the technical term. And so because the electron can exist in all places at all times at like any given moment, it isn't until like it's actually measured that it collapses. And we find this through the double slit experiment, right? It collapses into a particle, a single entity. And we're like, okay, what just happened? So what that basically means and how it translates into manifestation is that web of infinite possibilities, right? So on a subatomic level, we exist in vibration. Every single cell in our body is existing in a state of vibration. Every single cell and everything in our reality is existing in vibration. And so if we can function or find the frequency of the thing that we want, we can call it to us. And that's through quantum entanglement or through the law of attraction, if you want to talk about it in manifestational terms. And so when we look at how things are functioning on the subatomic level, it's so vastly different from what we had originally thought in the scientific field. Then all of a sudden it's kind of flipping everything on its head. And we're realizing, okay, well, if we can become more energy and less matter, how can we kind of hack the matrix, so to speak? And that's where all of this kind of comes into play.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk a little bit more about quantum entanglement. What exactly is it, and how does this apply to the manifestation process?
Yeah, so the way that quantum entanglement really kind of, the way I understand it anyway, is that two particles become entangled. It can be, I'll give you an example. You and I are technically entangled. We're not technically particles, but it's the same kind of concept, right? So you and I have met. We are now entangled. You know, if I do something, you're going to like go, hey, I know this person. I know how they operate. I want to do something else. Maybe you'll buy a course. Maybe you'll make a decision based off of what I say and vice versa, right? So the particles that are entangled, they will influence each other regardless of time, space, all the things. And so when we look at it from a vibrational aspect, we kind of tie it back to the law of attraction. So in my step 2 of manifesting, it's lock in the vibe. And in order to do that, you have to know that whatever it is that you just decided you wanted, it gets to be yours. And that's an energetic exchange that like, now I've decided I'm going to be a millionaire, for instance. What do I then have to do energetically to become in alignment and entangled with that type of person who gets to pull that to me? Does that make sense? So all of these things kind of pull in and help you to be a part of that energetic system so that everything works in tandem. Your reality exists right now because you've entangled with different thought forms, with different beliefs, and this is how your version of reality gets to look for you. But you can decide at any moment, again, going back to deciding, you can decide at any moment to shift it if you don't like how it's playing out for you.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. One of the things that I was thinking about is, as part of my millionaire author destiny. I want to be a New York Times bestselling author. Well, I realized I don't subscribe to the New York Times. I'm like, how would I
Mm,
even know if I was a New York Times bestselling author? Like, I'm not even subscribed. So, guess what I did last month? I'm like, well, if I'm going to be a New York Times bestselling author, I should be subscribed to the New York Times, right? So now I am
right?
entangling myself with the New
Yes.
York Times.
Yes. Absolutely. And then of course you have to look in and dig into like, okay, what does it take to become a New York Times bestselling author? Do you have to have certain credentials? Do you have to have a certain number of sales, which by the way, you do. You also have to realize that even if you have the best-sellingest book ever, that it's actually a curated list. And so if you don't have the right people who know about you, you could still sell a ton of books and still not hit the list because you haven't, I guess, enticed or entangled yourself enough with the people who are curating the list. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that is so interesting. Um, so it has been my experience that many people who fail to manifest a big dream skip a very important step, and that
Right.
is taking action. So, I feel like, especially when it comes to money, you have like these two camps of people. You have like the Dave Ramseys and the Susie Ormans that are all into the systems and the action. And then you have these other camps of people who many times they're called like the woo money people, where it's like just think positively, put a crystal in your bra, like say your mantras, and money is just going to fall into your lap. Now, I know that you can use those manifestation tools, but they have to be paired with the action and the systems if you want long-term success. So what is the quantum principle behind the taking action piece of it?
Yeah, so the quantum principle is quantum tunneling, otherwise known as time collapsing. So in this regard, it's basically like locking on to the future that you want. You've decided what you want, you're going to go after it, but you have to be open then to all of the internal nudges that you're going to start receiving. And it could be just logical next steps. It could be through manifestation, meditations. It could be through your best friend was like, oh, I heard this thing that you were going to do that other thing. And here's this guy that I know. It can come in so many different ways, shapes, and forms. And while there's truth on both sides, there is like a middle ground too. So like on one hand, you do need systems in place. You have to create the neural pathways that help you to build the wealth, to have the thing, to write the book. But on the other side, on the woo side, like hypothetically, in a quantum field, when all infinite potential exists, it all exists now because we're only ever in the now. There's no past, there's no future. So if that's the case, if every time, every moment actually exists in the now, you could hypothetically time collapse it. But the way that we get tripped up is most people don't believe that we can do that. We don't believe we can get to that point and collapse time that quickly. And so our resistance keeps us stuck in that belief of not being able to do it. Even if we want it to be so, even if we think it could be so, our belief structure, our subconscious mind is still keeping us in a place of resistance. So that can't actually come to be. And so if you want to bridge the gap, you need to do, well, two things. Work on your mindset. So if you want it to be that everything gets to happen really quickly for you, everything, like you can make decisions and what you want manifests within a certain time frame or a very short period of time, you need to start working on those subconscious beliefs that tell you you can't have it. Then you have to take those inspired action steps that are coming to you. If you get a weird, and sometimes it can be strange stuff, guys. It doesn't have to just be like, oh, of course, now the next step is going to be, I'm going to get on the New York Times bestseller list, and then I'm going to figure out how many sales I need to have in a certain week. And then the next thing I need to do is like hunt down all the editors who are curating the list. It doesn't have to be like that. It could be literally like, oh, you need to step away from your computer right now and go wash dishes. And you're like, what? That's simple. I'm going to wash dishes. But if you listen to yourself, sometimes you're being guided to the easiest step that's going to get you there, right? And so if going over to wash the dishes, for instance, then leads you to have an idea to call a friend that you haven't talked to in a while. And then you find out your friend, when you call her, has a sister-in-law who's on the New York Times bestseller list. It all started because you took the inspired action step to step away from your computer, go wash the dishes, or to go for a walk. Or so sometimes it can be very innocuous or very benign little things, and you don't know why you're being called to do it. And sometimes we just brush them aside, ignore them. But when you start paying attention, you start to feel it's like there's a vibrational difference when you get those real inspired nudges to do something that is probably going to get you to a higher elevated state for the thing that you're trying to pull in. Have you ever had that happen, Christine?
Yeah, I have. And I think, in all honesty, it's probably only been within the last year or two that I have gotten much better at listening to my intuition. So whether you want to call it your intuition, your higher self, the Holy Spirit, like whatever, your angels, guidance, whatever. But, being sensitive to those things, even sometimes when they're like, yeah, but, and I've often found, like, when I say, yeah, but, I'm like, okay, I'm about to like push something aside that might be extremely helpful. And a lot of times I'll tell people, if it seems a little scary, then you probably need to do it.
Dare to enter the Wealthy Woman Book Club, where answers exist to forbidden questions, where women of all ages and income secretly gather, where knowledge is shared, where possibilities are explored, where women claim their power. Dare to stay a spell in the Wealthy Woman Book Club. In this place, we lift each other up. In this place, we start dreaming again. In this place, we see financial miracles. In this place, we grow through the glory and the failure. In this place, we step into a new identity. Dare to champion the Wealthy Woman Book Club. We're creating a future where women are financially empowered across the globe. We're creating a future where our daughters stand on equal financial footing with our sons. We're creating a future where we purchase with our principles rather than price tags. We're creating a future where we use the power of money for the benefit of people and the planet. Welcome to the Wealthy Woman Book Club. Dare to come in, woman. Come in. Join us at wealthywomanbookclub.com.
Yes,
Not like
yes.
scary, dangerous, but uncomfortable or unfamiliar.
Oh, you know all about the one that I just had to do, so I completely agree with that.
I'd love for you to share that example because I think it is freaking amazing.
It was so crazy. Christine is in our mastermind. It's called the Circle of Eight Mastermind, and I think we're going to talk about that too. And it's just been an amazing and incredible experience. But the gist is that we are meditating, and we're meditating every day. And when we're together, we meditate for each other in a big time zone. But for me, it was my morning meditation. I've been meditating daily for, oh gosh, I think 6 months now. And on my anniversary, which was in February, my husband and I went to Barnes and Noble because that's what we do. We've been married for 12 years. What are you going to do? Go to the bookstore, of course. So we were at the bookstore.
Date
for
in
some
my
reason,
book.
right? For some reason, Jen Sincero's You're a Badass was staring at me. It was the 10th anniversary edition. It was all gold and hardcover and beautiful. And for some reason, I was like, I need this book. I already have You're a Badass at Making Money, but I hadn't read the first book. And so I was like, okay, I clearly need this book for some reason. So I purchased the book. I read the book like within that week. I was so excited. I reread Then Money is You're a Badass at Making Money. I ended up reading that. And I was like, I don't know what it is about this lady, but I feel called to her. So I went onto her website and realized that she had like a group coaching thing that was starting in just a couple of weeks, which was April 8th, which ended up being my deceased brother's birthday. So I'm like, of course, that's another sign. I have to go do this. And so I signed up. I did her 8-week coaching, and I love Jen. She's an amazing woman, very insightful, so funny. And I realized on the first call, right, she was just great. She had 4 calls in this program where it was live and you could ask questions. And for me, like the questions that were coming up, but from other people were very, I don't want to say basic, but for me, from my level of understanding of manifestation, they were basic. And so I was listening to her answer questions and I'm like, okay, well, I'm obviously not a good fit for asking a question. So I'm just going to stay back and I'm going to answer people who aren't going to get answered or get called on for that particular day in the chat aspect of it. Cause I was like, that was fun. That was more interesting to me. The following day, though, in my meditation, I was like, oh, here's what happened. Here's the layout of everything. You ended up finding this book and then reading this book and then going into this course because you're going to ask Jen Sincero to come on your podcast. And I was like, the heck I am. Like, what? Wait a minute. What? And then of course my brain goes into, well, can I just send her an email? I mean, and I'm in her chat or I'm in her Facebook group. Can I just ask in Facebook? And it was a very adamant, no, you have to do this live on one of those calls. Other people have to see you do it. And I was like,
in front of everyone, just in case you fail, in front of everyone. And she says no.
In case
that would be my thought.
No, what? Yeah, that was definitely my thought. I was going, oh my gosh, this sounds absolutely frightening. I'm not typically a scared type of person, but that definitely put me in my place. But I had made the decision earlier this year. I have a podcast episode about it myself, where I'm like, okay, any nudges, any inspired guidance that I get, I'm going to take action on. So I pulled up my bootstraps and I was like, okay, we're going to do this thing. We're going to ask Jen live on one of her calls to do this thing. So the next call I get on and I'm talking or I'm waiting in line. I had my hand raised. I'm doing all the things and I'm thinking, oh gosh, this is going to happen. It's going to happen. We've got a half an hour left. I'm like 3 away from being asked. I'm like, oh, and then I realized that our call was only an hour and a half and not 2 hours. And so I was like third for the next call. So I had to wait another 2 weeks until the call happened, sitting there going, oh my God, I have to ask.
You had like sweaty palms for 2 weeks, right?
Yes, it was crazy. And you had to listen to it too. It's so funny. I'm like, do this thing. So I did do it. I got on the call. I raised my hand again. They had a list of people in like the order that we were in. And so I asked the question live. Scared out of my mind to do it. I don't even know why I'm scared because she's just a person, right? And I'm just a person. It's just that the notion of doing it was in my head at the time frightening. And she was like, "Oh, like, well, you got my email address, right? Yeah, right.
Jen freaking
like, my email address.
Sincero.
I know, right? It was so crazy." And so she's like, "Yeah, just send me the details and the information and send it to the email." And that was it, like done. I was like, "Oh, thank God. Okay, well, see, I did it, universe. Angels, guides, whoever, like, did you see it? I did it." But it was more for me at that point. It was like, okay, even if she doesn't say yes, even if she, like, nothing happens about it, I did the thing that I was being called to do. Although in my meditation, to be fair, they did say the answer's already yes. And nothing happened. Like, it was just quiet. It was crickets. It was like, okay. And I was like, did I send it to the right email? And so I looked and I was like, oh, there's a different email. So I sent it to the secondary email a little bit later on. It was like a week and a bit later. And so her assistant was like, okay, great. I got the email. Jen's actually working on some other things. She's out of town. She'll get back to you when she can. Okay, great. Another week went by. I kind of was like, it was obviously just for me to step out of my comfort zone. That I was elevating. I was getting myself out there. It's fine. And then I was doing Dr. Joe Dispenza heart mind coherence meditation and came out of it. And lo and behold, who had signed up to come onto my podcast? Jen Sincero. So now in July, I get to have Jen on the Author Revolution podcast. And I would never have done that had I not gotten the meditation and the nudge to be like, hey, ask Jen to come on the show.
Yes. Well, and I remember that you were very nervous. And, the rest of us, the other 7 of us in the circle of 8 were like, you can do this. She is going to say yes. And the celebration thread in our Facebook group, when you were like, look who's on my calendar, we were just like, oh my God, we knew it. It was
Right. And
amazing.
she didn't even email me or anything. She just signed up. That's it.
Oh my God.
But it wasn't on my timing. And I think that's the important thing too, right? It was like, I just
Hmm.
trusted that I did the right thing. I took the inspired action and it came through when it was the right time for me, for her, for the whole thing to work out. And had I
Yeah.
been trying to force it or had I been, in a resistant state, I think either nothing would have happened. She would have been like, yeah, okay, creeper, like whatever. Or like
Yeah.
she would have just ignored me and nothing
Right.
would have come of it. But because I was able to stay in such a like I did the thing I was being asked to do, it's now in your hands universe, it was able to come
Hmm.
when it was time.
Yeah. No, I love that. And I do think there's definitely the balance between you stepping out and taking the action and not being attached to a particular timeline. And you can be
Mm,
hopeful about the result and also not devastated if it doesn't work out exactly the way you thought it was going to.
absolutely. I mean, there is power in having like a very focused timeline. I mean, Jen even teaches that, right? So the whole point of the class that I was taking with her was like, okay, in 8 weeks, what are you going to manifest in that time period? And then there's like, systems and plans in order to do it. And so your entire focus is on the decision of what you're doing in these 8 weeks, right? And so you can manifest things quickly, but not all things. I think that there is a level of like our subconscious mind, maybe it's our higher selves, something is out there where there's a better, more aligned timeline. And if we can still stay open to that, it will be helpful for us. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And if your manifestation involves other people, then you cannot directly control other people. You can
Yeah.
try, but it does not work out very well.
Right. Well, they have their own manifestations that they're working through too. And so
Exactly.
now all of a sudden you've got that, entanglement aspect of it, and it still has to work out for each other. Like you're revolving around each other's world and in the orbit of it, but there's still going to be elements that have to lock into place in order for it to come through. And so, yeah, absolutely. I agree.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and there's been certain individuals that I've thought like, oh my gosh, I would love to help this person as their financial coach. And, it happens. Sometimes it happens 2 or 3 or 4 years later,
Right.
when the time
Yeah.
is right. So,
Yeah. They have
you
to
can't
upgrade their
be.
mental systems for
Mhm.
sure. They have to decide that this is their next step and that they're ready for it.
Yeah. All right. So before we wrap up, I want to discuss the power of the manifestation mastermind because I did have an epic experience with our circle of eight. How does this coming together into this mastermind, how does this amplify the energy of our manifestations?
So powerful. When you have a focused group of people all intentionally meditating on the same intention, right? It amplifies it into the quantum field. And so the concept is actually Lynn McTaggart's. She was doing the intention experiment, and she has a book called The Power of Eight too. So both of those are her books as well. Super interesting stuff. She was originally a journalist, and then she's gone on to do a lot of other things. But what's really powerful is that when you have a circle of eight or more, she even has groups that are more than eight. When you're focusing on the same thing, let's say you're trying to help someone get over a really terrible like divorce situation, like we had in our group, and have a positive outcome at the end of it. Everyone is focused for 8 to 10 minutes. We're all meditating on the same exact thing, envisioning the positive outcome that's coming, that is going to happen. It has happened. There is a knowing by the rest of the group. It elevates the energy not only for that person, but each and every one of us, because we all have our own situations that kind of mirror or reflect it. It doesn't necessarily have to be, a divorce situation, but there's things that we're trying to have a positive outcome on. And so it will still impact us through, again, quantum entanglement, so that we are all like in that locked vibration of this gets to be better for us. It's this or something better. And so each of us had our own things that we were working on and our own experiences that came from it. What was so cool is that each of us very quickly had that tied connection, and we were able to start seeing and envisioning like those elements of things coming together and working. And so we had, some of us would hear things and get messages for the other person. Some of us would see and visualize things happening. Some of us would get just like a knowing. Some of us could write the aspect down. So it was like we were almost developing our own psychic skills through the process of it as well, which was super interesting. And so it just elevates and levels you up in a way that I think doing it on your own, while that's still powerful, it's not the same. That it's so cool to have that extra energy, that extra focus and intention from others.
Yeah. Well, I feel like it built up our faith, having the other members who were seeing positive results and some of the messages that came through for different people and some of the messages that came through for me really helped me to have an amazingly successful launch of the Wealthy Woman Book Club. It was a $10,000 launch for me, which was
amazing.
Yes, which was amazing. I don't think I shared that. But I know for a fact some of the things that happened in that group allowed for that to happen because there were certain ideas that came through. For example, Heather, who's in our group, said, I don't think you should read Money is Emotional first as your first book for the book club. I think it should be your new book, the one that no one else has read. And here I am thinking like, oh my God, I still have to finish it up. There's still a couple chapters I have to button up before I can do this. But as soon as she said it, even though the idea scared me, I was like, I knew it was a divinely inspired idea. I'm like, okay, we have got to do this. And there were some other things like that as well. And I think the really cool thing is we have more than half of the circle of 8 now in the Wealthy Woman Book Club, which is
so
amazing.
Right? And I just finished Rich Dad, Poor Dad today. And of course, obviously read your new book because it's amazing. Oh my gosh, Pleasure Money? No.
Provider money,
pleasure money. There we go. I don't know why I always trip up on that title. I'm like, it's like the P's on there, just crazy, but it was so good. And I love the way that you have the concept of the emotional aspects of money and how they're so vastly different. As someone who reads the energy levels, it was so easy for me to connect to the 2 different types of money. And then it kind of, I'm a Virgo. And so for me, it clicked into my brain where I'm like, oh my gosh, I've been focused too much on provider money. Oh, no wonder I am not having as much fun with it. And I wonder, I'm like, okay, now I need to start pulling in both. And I could see more clearly how that could be the case and how I could start doing it, which then put me on a path of deciding and doing more things and taking new inspired action when it comes to money that I wasn't even doing or even thinking about before. So good.
I love to hear that. Yes. See people, quantum entanglement. And let me tell you, the quantum entanglement that's going on in the Wealthy Woman Book Club is epic already. And we're only 2 months in. It's pretty insane.
Right? It's so good. I've learned so much in the past 2 months because obviously I am in the book club. Guys, you got to be in there. But it's so good. And these are books that I probably would have read anyway, but because we're doing it together, it's been so much fun because now we can communicate and talk about it and get your advice, Christine, on certain aspects that maybe we're not even all that financially literate on. And so we're able to level up to new heights. It's just been so eye-opening for me.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just think, interplaying off of each other, it's like somebody brings something up. And even if you haven't been exactly in that same situation, it's like there's something that you learn from that and you relate to that. So it has been a lot of fun. Well, Carissa, thank you so much for being here. This has been truly an eye-opening and a little bit of a mind-bending discussion of the quantum physics of manifestation. And we are going to have all of your links in the show notes so people can hop in because I know you are going to be doing more with the Circle of 8 in a few months and your other programs as well. And I know Bill wants to chime in, and he actually knows a little bit about quantum physics, which is so cool.
Keyword here is I know a little bit about quantum physics because my son-in-law is a doctorate in physics. So
Oh,
And
cool.
it's interesting,
So cool.
Chris, I've had this conversation with him about time. When you were speaking about time, and my argument has always been, to the amusement of him and others of his species, that there is no past, present, or future. Actually, all time and everything that exists right now, and that and
Right.
so we can extend into that, and it's like, and he laughs at me, but I know he agrees with me, as a matter of fact. So you have to change
Yeah.
the name of the podcast right now, because I think we're going to have to go with something like, money's emotional, or money's entangling, or something like that. Because Chris, I feel really entangled with you. I was already entangled, with Christine. Now I'm entangled with everybody,
Love
and
that.
and I'm fascinated by this. I really am. I think it's great that you came on to share this with everybody. The one thing Christine didn't ask you, though, is if people want to get a hold of you or listen to you, how do they do that? Because I'm going to have to now listen to you, as a matter of fact.
That'd be awesome. Yeah. So my website is authorrevolution.org. So there are two R's in the middle. It's author and then revolution.
Hmm.
My podcast is just the Author Revolution podcast. And I've talked about all sorts of things, including quantum manifestation and all sorts of strategy for authors as well. But I talk about manifestation and mindset and all these things a lot.
Yeah, no,
And
no,
her
no. I mean,
fiction books are super fun. So her fiction books usually have a little bit of supernatural stuff, or a lot of bit of supernatural stuff in them. So if any of you like paranormal romance or things of that nature, definitely check out her books, because we were going to have her Amazon page linked up as well.
fantastic. That's great. Christine, for people
Great.
who are listening for the first time who don't know how to get a hold of you, how do they do that?
Yes. Well, the best place is to hop over to my website, which is my name, christineluken.com. If you're interested in one-on-one financial coaching, I do have a few spots currently open. That's christineluken.com/apply.
Beautiful. And I know you mentioned the book club, and I know it's off to a smashing success and start. For those who are listening who've never heard of the book club because they just joined the podcast, is it still open, or what is the situation with the club?
Absolutely. You can join whenever you want to. So when you join, you're in for a year. And the reason why we do that is because we don't want people entangling and disentangling. We want you in for a
Are
year.
trying to get disentangled?
Well, and the
Yes.
reason why is because we're building a safe, supportive community.
Yeah.
And, this is for people who want to dedicate the next year to growing their wealth. And it's open to women of all ages, all incomes. We have international members all over the globe. So it's really, if you want to improve your wealth, if you want to learn more about money and you want to do it with other women, then the Wealthy Woman Book Club is for you. If you go to my website, it's front and center right there on the top.
Beautiful. And I would encourage people to
And
do
once you
that.
join, you're not going to want to leave anyway.
I know.
There you
We will
go.
entangle you forever.
They're going to love it. They're going to love it.
I think that's great. And for those of you who can do it, I mean,
Well, then you're
why
locking in
remain
the vibe
vague?
too, and you're able to manifest more.
Exactly.
Exactly. So do it. Okay. The other thing you can do that's really, really, really easy, because you don't even have to go anywhere, is if you are listening to this podcast for the first time and are not a subscriber. Well, my question would be, well, why not? Because all you have to do is hit the subscribe button, or the little follow button that's right there in front of you. And then you're notified every time Christine drops a new episode of her podcast. You can listen to it. You can enjoy it. You can learn something, as a matter of fact. And if that is the case, if you like this website, please, or the website, the podcast, please tell people about it. Podcast or website. Word of mouth is an awesome promotional tool, and we would really very much appreciate it. On behalf of Christine, I'm Bill Tucker. Thank you for taking the time to listen today. And I would remind you that today, you can go out and make today a great day, or not. It is your choice. Until next time.
Thank you for listening to the Money is Emotional podcast. To get in touch, visit our website at www.christineluken.com or drop us a line at hello@christineluken.com. And don't forget to click the follow button to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Christine Luken. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing or tax advice. Always seek the advice of your advisor, tax professional, or other qualified financial professional with any questions you may have regarding your personal finances.